Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of I Bought a Watch. Today we're going to be having a look at this absolute monster, and like a monster I have kept it in its case. Before I get into the review, please remember to like and subscribe the video. It really does help the channel out. And just a quick mention, I am doing a channel giveaway, so if you want to enter a chance to win a free watch, click the link up here. I'll leave a link in the description below to enter that giveaway. Okay, getting on to this review. So this is a watch from a company called Phorcydes, or Phorcydes. Let me know in the comments below how you would say it. I'm still not 100% sure. I've heard both ways said. So this packaging is very reminiscent of that Lume rectangular watch that I recently reviewed a couple weeks back. You know, substantial carrying case, very useful. I use my rectangular one as a travel case for when I go away on the weekend. I can keep a couple watches, and it just gives me peace of mind to know that they will be safe because it has nice padding and is nicely secured, so they won't be rattling around in my suitcase. Okay, now let's look at this watch. Let me just give you some of my first impressions, as I didn't get the chance to do one in an initial unboxing. And the thing you notice first of all is it's big. It really has a heft that makes it feel like an actual piece of diver's equipment. The second thing you notice is of course this design. It's definitely drawing inspiration from brands like Seiko and Panerai. The case shape is very reminiscent of the Seiko turtle reference that Captain Willard wears in Apocalypse Now, and the dial is very reminiscent of certain Panerai references, which can often be found on the wrists of actors such as Jason Statham and Sylvester Stallone in some of their big hit action movies. So in that vein of design, I think Phorcydes have really pulled off a military action stars watch. Now whether that's for you is another question. But if you do want to pick one of these up, I have left an affiliate link in the description below, and you can pick one of these up for £173. Although it might be worth waiting for the November 11/11 sale on AliExpress to get a little more knocked off that price. Moving on to some of the specifications. So diameter wise, we have a 44mm diameter. Lug to lug, 50mm. The lug width is 22mm, and the thickness here is 15mm. Now with dimensions like that, this watch is really not joking around and actually has the heft of what is essentially a piece of diver's equipment. Now that's kind of how you have to look at this watch, because it really is big, it's heavy, it's bold, and it's there to make a statement. I'll go a bit more over the actual diver's specifications that we got here, because this is packed full of features to help you underwater. First of which is of course this dial. As you can see, the dial here is designed to maximize legibility and time reading at a quick glance. And although some will complain it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that you would usually expect on a dial, but reducing that clutter has really improved at a glance time reading. That being said, this watch is a sandwich dial, and that basically means that there is a lower lumed level which allows them to pump loads of lume into this piece. This piece has amazing lume, and then a second layer which is put on top with cutouts revealing that lower lumed level. On the upper portion we have a matte black dial with Phorcydes or Phorcydes submersible printed under the 12 and professional 500 meters printed above the 6, which is of course this watch's second party trick. Now 500 meters is an actual ridiculous distance. Humans can't survive down that low unless you're doing some deep heavy duty saturation diving, so it is a bit overboard, but it's definitely cool to have on your wrist. This is all just reiterating the fact that this does feel like a piece of diver's equipment, so you just got to bear that in mind whether you really want this kind of overbuilt piece of equipment on your wrist. Speaking of overbuilt, this watch also features a helium escape valve. Now if you don't know what that is to equalize the pressure as this goes down to incredible depths, so that the helium within the case doesn't expand and pop the crystal off. Okay, back to the dial. The handset on this piece, kind of semi-skeletonized hour and minute hand, very reminiscent of the Omega Seamaster Professional. I'm not such a big fan of this handset, but it has been pumped full of lume to maximize this watch's low light visibility. The second hand here is that stark contrast orange, which really adds a pop of color onto this dial. The bottom tip of that second hand is also lumed, although I must say it is very hard to distinguish as it rotates above the skeletonized portion of the hour and minute hand. Moving on, we have the sapphire crystal, which, as you can see by the amount of flecto, does not have an anti-reflective undercoating, which is unfortunate, but it's nice that we get a sapphire. Moving out onto the bezel, we have a 120 click unidirectional bezel, which is, it has kind of a okay action. It's a little jumpy and not very audible clicks. I prefer my bezels to have a bit more audible clicks, but there is practically no playback. And when you don't have a minute track on the dial, the bezel alignment is not such a big thing, but even still, I feel like they've misaligned it ever so slightly. This could just be an optical illusion, but that 30-15 seems a bit off in relation to some of the other markers. A second thing is that the 15 seems to be at a bit of a skew. It doesn't seem to be perfectly perpendicular to the 3 o'clock marker, which is very disappointing for a watch at this price. Otherwise, the finishing on this bezel is very nice. You have the circular brushing on the base with the kind of high gloss finished markers at the 5-minute marks, with larger markers at the 15, 30 and 45, which also display Arabic numerals. Then of course there is that big old Lume pip at the 12 o'clock to be used as a reference in low light conditions. Speaking of Lume, here's a Lume shot. And now, as you can see, this one is a Lume monster. I've shown it in the thumbnail, but this one really hangs on for ages. I don't know what they've done here, but they have slathered that Lume on. And as I mentioned before, you can see the end tip of that seconds hand rotating around the pinion. Kind of useless to do any timings in low light conditions. Would have been better if they moved the Lume section a little further out. But the dial is not all that's loomed. If you look up here, the buckle is also loomed with Phorcydes, which is a really cool touch. Although somewhat of a gimmick, something that I do appreciate and hadn't noticed until I was filming this review. I don't really know how to emphasize how well the Lume is. It's very hard to film Lume, and it often looks better on camera than it does in real life. But I just gotta say, this Lume is very impressive. And if Lume is something that's really important to you, Phorcydes seem like a company that is doing Lume right. Moving on to the case, we have a 316L stainless steel case, which, as you can see, has been PVD coated, I believe, to give it this kind of black gloss finish. Now, I've never had a PVD coated case, and I've got to say it is something to experience. And I've got to come clean that at first I thought PVD coated watches looked kind of like plastic toys, but moving away from that image is definitely helped by the weight of this piece. Now, maybe the black case is to hide some of the size of this watch in low light conditions. I mean, people do say black is slimming, but even still, I'm not 100% sure about this case finishing. Now, that's just my opinion. You may love black PVD coated watches. Let me know in the comments below, by all means. I love to hear your guys' opinions on pieces. It's kind of a shame because I do love the lume and dial of this piece. And I do think that they do a couple other color variants. I'll pop a picture on screen now, but everywhere on AliExpress that I've searched seems to be sold out, and maybe that's for good reason. Moving around to the crown at the 4 o'clock position, you have the Phorcydes logo nicely etched into crown. The crown is screw down, of course, to help with that 500 meters water resistance, which allows you to operate that Seiko NH35 movement inside. I love that the crown has this little groove to get your fingernail in around the crown, so having that little groove on the edge allows you to easily move between the two distinct crown positions. So of course in the first position you have hand winding because it is of course a Seiko NH35. However, being the NH35 does unfortunately mean first position is unfortunately a ghost date position because this is a date movement. But second position hacks the movement, as you can see, and allows you to set the time. The crown action is very responsive, as you can imagine, and engaging, and the threading on this screw down crown is very well done. No grit or grime. Flipping it around to have a look at that screw down etched case back, we have Phorcydes etched in at the top with the Phorcydes logo in the middle and the model number, the PH1. Around the edge of that screw down case back is some more specs including sapphire crystal, 500 meters water resistance and stainless steel. Moving on to the watch strap, we have these rather substantial and very actually pliable silicone rubber straps which have a nice kind of curve in them. They're of course 22 millimeters at that lug and taper down to 20 millimeters at the bottom, and actually it's been molded very well. You have a little curve at the bottom here and a curve at the top. It allows you to easily conform to the wrist, and when it's kind of fastened up it doesn't kind of stick out at an odd angle and get caught on things. On the underside it is nicely textured to allow breathability, and also when you do go swimming allow the water to drain off, and it does feature the quick release system which is very nice. On the other side we have double keepers. I always like to see that. Keeps the watch fastened and it stops that kind of the tail end flicking about, and a very substantial tang and buckle with the Phorcydes logo etched in, which as I showed before is also pumped full of lume. I guess all that's left to do now is to pop this one on the wrist. And here it is. Now, unfortunately, no matter how many times I tell myself I am no 90s action star, so this one wears incredibly big on my wrist. However, that being said, the rather short 50mm lug to lug makes this one surprisingly wearable, but still definitely out of reach for people with slightly slimmer than average wrists. Now, this one has a massive wrist presence. This is one that you're not going to forget that you're wearing. Not only is it big and bulky, but it also has a considerable weight to it. If anything, just wearing this one will give you a workout, so maybe you will end up looking more and more like one of those 90s action stars that wear these pieces in the first place. Okay, enough joking around. Let's move on to reasons why you might not want to buy this watch. And I've got to say, unfortunately, there are quite a few. Starting off, the size. This is a big, bulky watch. And also, not only does it have the size, but it also carries a considerable weight. So already that alienates a whole section of the market. Secondly is the styling. I personally am not a big fan of the PVD coating. The non-PVD coated watch is slightly more up my street. But even still, the sizing and dimensions, I just don't feel like I would ever get round to wearing this particular piece. I mean, I said it before, but this really feels like a diver's tool. And unfortunately, I don't know how many divers are shopping for their dive watches on AliExpress. It does feature that helium escape valve and of course the 500 meters of water resistance, which is a really cool feature, but I feel maybe the money has been misspent. I would much prefer if this watch was £70 cheaper at the cost of 300 meters water resistance and that helium escape valve. That may just be me, but I feel like for the majority of the market, we would much prefer a £100 watch with 200 meters water resistance and without the helium escape valve. Now, of course, I might be completely wrong. There might be a massive market for this kind of watch. However, I think it would be far more palatable as a purchase if we could pick this up at that £100 mark, especially when you consider that this is probably not going to be a watch that you wear all too often. Another reason perhaps you wouldn't want to buy this watch is it does have a few QC issues. That 15 was definitely at a slant, and I'm not 100% sure that this bezel is even correctly aligned, which is quite a feat considering the lack of many minute markers or a minute track. The lack of minute track is also something that I should probably mention, as it probably is annoying some people, and maybe you're mentioning in the comments already. And although it has excellent at-a-glance legibility, the lack of a minute track really means that in terms of accurate time reading, this watch is even beaten by certain dress watches, which does seem a little crazy to me when it's put like that. Well, that does it for this episode, guys. Please let me know in the comments below, does this watch have a place on land or should it have stayed in the deep? Please let me know in the comments below. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already and enjoyed the video. And just another reminder, we are doing that giveaway. There should be a link in the description and on screen now if you want to enter for a chance to win a free watch. Alright, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!